In the crowded lunchroom, the sound of a plastic tray hitting the linoleum froze the room for a single heartbeat, and then the laughter came like a wave. Her shirt was ripped at the shoulder, fabric torn back like a page suddenly exposed, and for a moment, every pair of eyes was a witness and a jury. Emma Carter was the club captain who taught kids how to fall and how to stand up again, a calm voice with steady hands and a belt that had been earned through sweat. Caleb Masters, son of the school board chair, moved through the crowd like he owned the air, his friends flanking him as if he were a small storm. This is not a story that ends with a ripped shirt. It is a story that begins with humiliation and turns into a movement that forces an entire district to look at itself. Tell me where you are watching from, and like if you believe courage can be taught. Now go back with me to the hallway before lunch when the first argument started and everything quietly began to tilt. Emma smelled the chalk dust on her practice ski and the metallic tang of the gym water fountain on mornings she coached. She had been a child who learned balance on uneven sidewalks, who felt the cold of winter mats through thin socks, who clung to the rasp of a coach voice that said, "Keep your chin here, stay ready, breathe." Her backstory started in a small apartment above a laundromat, where she learned patience watching machines spin and spin, the rhythm of laundry matching the rhythm of throwing and falling and getting up again. At 8, she tasted the sting of mat burns and the sweetness of victory in a county tournament, the way a kid might taste lemon candy and never forget the bite. At 17, she moved schools for a scholarship, and at 20, she chose to come back to teach because the town had given her a way out once and she wanted to give a way in to those who needed it. Those memories came with sensory tags, the way a song attaches to a season. The smell of warmed rubber mats, the whisper of Velcro, the damp wake of a medal in her palm. They were small things that grounded her when words tried to make her small. The first classroom confrontation looked ordinary in the register of school friction until it became not ordinary. Emma was arranging textbooks on a cart when Caleb slid his desk so close he could whisper in a way intended to unsettle. "You really think you belong teaching judo here?" he said, with a smile like a cracked glass. "You think you are different?" "I think I teach respect," Emma replied without looking up. "Respect is earned," Caleb said, "not given by a girl in a kimono." "I am not asking you for respect," she said. "I am asking for focus and safety for everyone." Nearby, Tyler, who was always the first to call out nonsense, rolled his eyes and muttered to Zoe, "This again." Zoe replied under her breath. Miss Patel, the counselor, stood by the door and watched the cadence of the exchange like a referee. "Emma," she said softly, "keep it calm." "I will," Emma answered. The tactile scrape of chalk on the board sounded steadier than the whispering crowd. The air smelled faintly of sanitizer and old posters. That tiny incident was like a pebble dropped in a pond. The ripples would reach the lunchroom. The lunchroom incident is the moment that changes everything, and it happened faster than anyone could record with intention and slower than anyone could forget. The bell rang and trays clattered. The room was a furnace of breath and fry oil and adolescent perfume. Emma stood at a table showing a wrist lock to Jamal when she felt a hand yank at her sleeve. "Hey, watch it," she said. Caleb laughed and his friends pushed. "You are not the teacher here," he said. "Maybe not," Emma replied, "but I am responsible now." Then a hand reached and fabric tore. The sound of ripping was sudden and animal. For a second, Emma froze, the paper cup she held trembling, the taste of vending machine cola metallic on her tongue. A phone lifted, and the recording began. "Drop it," someone yelled. "You okay?" another voice asked. Emma did not fall into shame. She moved with the muscle memory of years. A hip shift, a gentle redirect, a judo throw that sent the instigator to the floor but never to hard contact. The room inhaled. "What did you do?" Caleb spat, rising from the table. "You threw him," whispered an older boy. Emma put a hand on the boy she had thrown and checked his wrist. "I protected myself," she said quietly. "You started it," Caleb said louder. Cameras blurred into a montage of angles, a quick chop of clips that would later be edited into accusation and praise. The smell of fried food and paper trays pooled against the sharper metallic note of panic. Students leaned in or stepped back, folding the scene into their moral inventories. When the footage hit social feeds, everything moved like an amplified animal. Short clips showed Emma's judo move without context. Other clips showed only the ripped fabric. Comments trended in two camps. "She should be investigated," read one string of replies from anonymous handles, while "that was self-defense" filled viewers from different neighborhoods. Screenshots began to circulate with captions that suggested she had used excessive force. Coach Daniels, who ran the program, called Emma into his office. "People are taking pieces," he said. "They are not seeing the whole." "Did you see the whole either?" Emma asked. "I saw what I needed to see," he answered. Nina Morales, the local reporter, texted Marcus Lee, the community lawyer, and wrote, "Is there a bigger story here?" Marcus replied, "Save everything." And he is the one who would later assemble a file. Messages arrived on Emma's phone with threats and with offers of support. A smell of coffee and nervous sweat invaded late-night meetings as allies gathered to strategize. This is the moment in every modern confrontation when a private hurt becomes public and the currency switches to evidence. The campaign of defamation began in the quiet of anonymous servers and escalated into formal threats. Anonymous accounts doctored images to show Emma in an aggressive stance they had trimmed from a gym class. A leaked email claimed she had prior complaints that did not exist. Caleb's father, Mr. Masters, called a closed meeting with the chair of the board and suggested a quick suspension until things calmed. "Appearances matter," he said in a voice like gravel. "We cannot have chaos in our schools." Principal Rose, tired and precise, wrote a draft notice that sounded neutral but felt like a gavel. "We need to preserve safety," she said to the council, "and we need to be seen to be fair." The smear was surgical. A fake account with a grainy photo, a private message taken out of context, and a short video edited to make Emma's move look gratuitous. The smell in the district office was of burnt coffee and paper fat as staff printed copies. Parents called. "What is going on?" one demanded. "Our son saw a video." Another parent whispered, "This could hurt the school." The pressure shifted from student gossip to institutional fear. At that point, a small coalition began to form. Zoe, Tyler, Jamal, Hannah, and Theo met in the library with Marcus Lee and Nina Morales. "We have backups," Marcus said, holding a thumb drive. "We have the full files and timestamps." Nina clicked through clips, and the click was a high, brittle sound. "We need witness lists," said Zoe. "I can gather statements," Jamal volunteered. "I will do the social side," Theo said. The club Confidence and Care that Emma advised became an ad hoc legal task force. "We need to preserve original files," Marcus insisted. "Do not forward, compress, reshare, or alter." He explained chain of custody in a voice that made the legal details sound weighty and guarded. They practiced responses the way Emma practiced throws, slow, methodical, and precise. The library smelled like ink and glue and old upholstery. Students whispered in a language that folded terms like evidence, depositions, and metadata into everyday talk. The public hearing was a slow crescendo that turned into a full-blown courtroom feeling inside a municipal auditorium. Chairs creaked. Projectors hummed. The original unedited footage played in full, and it was like seeing a painting in color after a black-and-white sketch. "This is the full context," Marcus said calmly when he stepped to the microphone. "We will show timestamps. We will show who recorded and how it was edited." Principal Rose read a letter in a voice that cracked on the word sorry. "We owe clarity to everyone," she said. Caleb sat with his father and his face was a hard mask. Emma stood to speak, and the smell of hand sanitizer clung to the microphone stand. She described what she felt in the split second the shirt tore, the rush of embarrassment, the panic, and the reflexive choice to protect herself and the other boy. Her voice did not waver.
"I train kids to fall and to get up," she said, "to protect themselves and to take responsibility for their actions." The room listened, and the silence was dense like humidity. A woman in the third row stood and testified that she had seen the whole incident and that Emma had been careful. Then Mr. Whitmore, a board member, took the microphone and read allegations that had been circulated online. The exchange that followed became the hinge of the story. "Where did these images come from?" Marcus asked. "We are still investigating," Mr. Whitmore answered. "Will you commit to transparency?" Nina demanded. "We will," Mr. Whitmore replied, and the words felt thin against a room that had seen the video in many edits. Tension Moment 1, expanded paragraph 1. The hearing reached a point where a sudden audio clip played a voice saying things that no one had expected. The clip was a private message between two of Caleb's friends, where they laughed about the edit they had made and how they had intended to make Emma look bad. The laughter on the clip sounded close and cruel, and the room inhaled as if a physical object had been thrown. People shifted in their chairs, the smell of coffee seemed suddenly acidic, and several phones captured the reaction. The atmosphere shifted from debate to accusation. Tension Moment 1, expanded paragraph 2. Then another witness rose, a friend of Caleb, and confessed that he had been pressured by money and promises to alter footage and to participate in the smear. His hands shook, and he kept touching the pendant at his neck as he spoke. "I did not know it would go this far," he said. "I am sorry." The apology landed uneven, and then the legal counsel for Caleb's family tried to redirect, insisting that social media cannot be trusted. Marcus interrupted with a calm question about chain of custody, and the auditorium hummed as the truth peeled through the noise. Technical evidence explanation for the record. Original raw files were preserved on 3 separate devices with verified timestamps. 2 independent witness statements were sworn to under penalty of perjury. And metadata analysis showed edits after initial upload. That short chain made the difference in proving intent and manipulation. The gym lock-in was the most immediate danger and the most theatrical moment. Caleb and a small group of boys locked the doors to the gym, apparently to prevent a vigil they had heard about. They moved with the swagger of kids who imagined power but not consequences.
Emma received a late-night text telling her students not to come, but they showed up anyway. Zoe and Jamal circled the exterior and heard shouting through the walls, the vibrations like a bass drum. "We will not let them intimidate us," Jamal whispered into his phone. The smell of dust and old sweat filled the gym as students inside chanted and pushed. Coach Daniels tried to break through the crowd while Principal Rose called the police and requested a presence that would not escalate matters. The tension was physical, the air heavy. Emma slipped in through a side entrance with 2 other students and faced Caleb in a moment that had the slow-motion quality of a film. "Let them out," she said. "We are not going to fight you," Caleb answered with a voice that tried to be brave. "This is not yours to decide," she replied. A shove, a flimsy panel gave way, and the noise threatened to become violence. Then a patrol car arrived, lights painting the windows blue and red. Officers moved in with a training that is less dramatic than people expect, but decisive. "We need statements," one officer said. "This is being documented." The presence of law changed the calculus. Faces that had been hot with adrenaline cooled. The gym that had smelled of old varnish and popcorn became sterile under flashlight beams. Police reports later recorded the lock-in and the names of those present as evidence that intimidation had been attempted. Tension Moment 2, expanded paragraph 1. When 2 police officers stepped into the gym, the chanting stopped and a thick pause settled, as if someone had cut the soundtrack of the night. Caleb stood with his chest heaving, and when he saw the lights, he swore and looked suddenly smaller, the bravado peeling away. Students who had been shouting began to call out names of friends and to ask about plans. The immediate danger shifted into legal procedure. Tension Moment 2, expanded paragraph 2.
After the police took preliminary statements, other students in the crowd began to step forward to say they had felt coerced into joining and that they had been offered money and privileges to take part in the planned lock-in. One boy cried as he described being told he would be allowed to skip detention if he helped. The admission was another brick in the wall of evidence showing that the campaign had not been spontaneous but orchestrated. The final public moment was a long day in front of the board, where each piece of evidence knitted into a clearer picture. Nina Morales published a long-form piece with side-by-side frames showing edits and an interview where the friend who had confessed sat across from Emma and said, "I am sorry I helped." "Thank you for telling the truth," Emma replied. "It was the right thing." The board voted to reprimand the students who had been proved to have organized the smear and
to require mandatory restorative sessions. More significant than the punishments were the policy changes. The district agreed to a new protocol on digital evidence preservation, staff training on social media literacy, and an independent review of how complaints are handled. The Confidence and Care Club was funded to run peer mediation programs. Mr. Masters publicly apologized in a letter that read like an attempt at repair, and Caleb was assigned community service and counseling. The smell of fresh paint in the boardroom felt oddly hopeful as the district prepared to repair not only reputation but systems. Tension Moment 3 expanded paragraph 1. The most corrosive piece of the campaign had been anonymous threats to Emma and to her family. They arrived as late-night messages that used specific details only a close watcher could know. The night when those threats peaked, a white envelope was left at her doorstep with a single folded paper inside that said a name and a time. The paper felt damp with the backyard air. The police logged the envelope and dusted for prints, and the lack of physical evidence did not ease the emotional impact. Emma slept poorly for days after that. Tension Moment 3 expanded paragraph 2. Community volunteers organized a neighborhood watch, and the club set up a rotating group to walk her home. Small acts like shared dinners and text chains created a net, and in that net she felt weight and warmth. At the hearing, one of the students who had sent messages stood and offered testimony that he had been goaded online and had not anticipated the depth of harm. "I did not think," he said. "I only wanted to be part of something." His voice broke like a switch, and the room understood how social games can become grave. The aftermath required practical steps. Marcus Lee filed an administrative complaint, and the council guided Emma and several witnesses through depositions and formal statements. The technical part was short and precise in tone, but heavy in consequence. Documents were sent to the district attorney's office with clear chain of custody and an index of edited files linked to the anonymous accounts. The discovery process uncovered email threads showing coordination and a payment that had been promised for participation in the smear. The legal work created a structure for accountability that felt less dramatic than the videos, but more durable. At 3 different moments, the community responded in visible ways. A candlelight vigil held outside the school featured speeches from students, parents, and staff. "We will not let fear be teacher," Zoe said into the mic, and the smell of wax warmed the night. An art piece made from the torn fabric of Emma's shirt was stitched by members of the sewing club and displayed in the library, a visible symbol of recovery. The Confidence and Care Club ran workshops on consent and on bystander intervention that were packed with students who wanted to learn skills, not slogans. The town newspaper ran an editorial about social responsibility, and the National Educator Forum invited Emma to speak about training that helps students de-escalate conflict instead of amplifying it. The epilogue begins with the symbolic object and a ceremony that feels both private and public. The torn shirt was mended and framed, but not hidden away. At the reinstatement meeting, Principal Rose returned the belt of office for the Judo program to Emma with a simple bow. Students applauded and some cried. "It is not about punishment," Emma said to the crowd. "It is about building structures where we can step in and protect each other, and where truth is not buried by power." The district adopted new rules that required preservation of original footage and created an independent ombudsman that handles social media incidents. A training program called Respect and Response was instituted that focused on communication skills and digital ethics. These reforms were voted on by a board that had spent months under scrutiny and now had to show it could change. The epilogue continues with personal restoration and the long, small work that reform demands. Emma kept coaching, and her program grew by 50% as students sought training in self-defense and in conflict resolution. Caleb enrolled in counseling and attended community service, where he learned to fix playground equipment and to assist in the confidence and care workshops. Some parents continued to argue about who was right, but many more joined the work of prevention. Nina Morales returned to interview students who had been silent and found new voices ready to tell what had happened. Marcus Lee helped draft a district policy template that other towns began to request. The local radio ran a segment about how evidence collection matters and how social media can be weaponized. A hashtag that began in anger slowly shifted into one of support and education, and people used it to share resources, hotlines, and contacts. The final moments offer a promise and a call to action that is both specific and broad. In the library, the framed shirt hangs near the list of program sponsors like a lesson. The Confidence and Care Club expanded into a coalition with other schools and began to deliver peer-led sessions about consent, digital literacy, and how to preserve evidence. Emma taught a lesson where she asked students to practice a wrist escape and then to write down 3 ways they would protect a friend. The room smelled of markers and new books. She told them, "Kindness is not weakness, it is a skill." The town changed a little, and in those small increments, safety was rebuilt. If this story moved you, share it so another community can see that accountability can be shaped by evidence, solidarity, and courage. Subscribe to follow this series because we will keep sharing the documents, the methods, and the people who turn a painful moment into a lasting lesson. Remember, the ripped shirt became not a mark of
shame, but a banner that reminded a school to be better. Courage learned is courage shared.